It's Thursday morning and you are watching The Sweat. I'm your host, Jessie Coffield, bringing you 55 minutes of DFS and sports betting goodness, starting in the NFL with DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich, and RotoWire's Alan Seslowski. Guys, NFL chase or fade time, so agree or disagree with the following statements. So, chase or fade this one. With so many upsets the last few weeks, taking the Cowboys money line at plus 115 is the best underdog bet this Sunday. Pierce, chasing or fading it?
I will chase this. I don't know how I became the Kansas City Chiefs hater around here. I like Patrick Mahomes. I like this team, but they're not very good. And so if that's just going to be who I am, always picking against the Chiefs, and I will continue to pick against the Chiefs because that's what their record bears out. That's what their number against the spread bears out. And the Cowboys, dare I say, if this is even possible, are slightly underrated. That defense has performed pretty well. They're good at taking the ball away, and Patrick Mahomes is good at giving the ball away. This is probably not the best payout, but it's the safest one on the board.
Jeff, do you agree and want to chase this?
I kind of side with the Cowboys here, so I don't think that they're a bad bet. I don't think they're the best underdog play on the board, so I will fade it from that perspective. I actually think there's two plays that I like better. I like the Chicago Bears at plus 180. I think these odds, again, just giving Baltimore too much credit. I don't know what we need to see from Baltimore. I get that they have the best player in the game, or in this game anyways, in Lamar Jackson, but it's a team who just, blew a game to Miami in prime time. They're very lucky to even have the record they have. The Bears defense showed up a little bit last week. They're not facing a high-powered passing offense here. I think plus 180 is an overreaction. And I really like the Seahawks. I think that's the best bet on the board for me. You've still got a banged-up Cardinals team. We don't even know really what's going on with Kyler Murray's injury status. I think the Seahawks bounce back here. Plus 105 for Russell Wilson at home. Whenever Russ is an underdog at home, I think it's a great bet.
All right, Alan, chase or fade taking the Cowboys money line at plus 115 is the best underdog bet this Sunday.
Chase. Other than Mike McCarthy, tell me something you don't like about this Dallas team. If I was going to place a chip on any team at this point to win it all, Dallas might be my bet. The Chiefs did look more like themselves on Sunday night, but the Cowboys, they're just better defensively, and they should get Tyron Smith back at left tackle. I'm comfortable with the Cowboys winning this one straight up, making a statement game.
All right, sticking with underdogs, 3 games that have double-digit spreads. So chase or fade, the Lions have a better chance to cover versus the Browns than the Giants versus the Bucks or the Texans versus the Titans, Jeff.
I'll fade this. I mean, I think anytime you get a Detroit question in a chase or fade segment, just fading the Detroit Lions is probably a good play. Did the Lions have their Super Bowl last week and they got a tie? And they're probably just still going to be, just drunk from the ecstasy of not winning last week, right? So we want to fade them there. But I also like these other two spots a little bit. I mean, you've got a division game there with Houston and Tennessee. Tennessee tends to play down to their opponent, too. I mean, I like the Titans long term. I really don't want to take them to cover a 10-point spread there. So I actually kind of like Houston. Again, Tyrod Taylor becoming a little bit more healthy, a little bit more in tune with the offense again after being off for a bit. I don't like Houston to win, but I like them to cover plus 10. And I actually kind of like the Giants as well. Again, Tampa Bay just seems to have been running good on like hot on variants with long throws and stuff like that. We are getting to the midpoint in the season. We've got like an older quarterback. Does the completion rate downfield just come down a little bit for Tampa? And the Giants, a team that's just decent at everything, not great, but not terrible either. Covering 11-point spread, I could see that too. So I actually like both those games better than the Lions.
All right, Alan, is the answer always to fade the Lions?
It's fade, but the Lions are a strong 0-8-1. One of the best 0-8-1, 0-9, I've ever seen. The Lions are coming off that overtime win for them, I should say. It really isn't a win against the Steelers. They're one of the most physical teams in the league, and now they have to go on the road for the second straight week against the Browns, who just got humiliated. And I know Houston's the actual worst team in football, and Tennessee is, 7-0 now versus playoff teams from last year. And by the way, we're going to need to start a drinking game on this show every time we mention last year when Pierce is on the show. But Tennessee is averaging only 229 yards over the last 2 games without Derrick Henry. That's 100 yards less per game. In all fairness, they've been without Julio, who's been compromised, and A.J. Brown as well. Tennessee would never do that trade again, knowing what they know now. And all that said, Houston still may not get 10 points. That game could be 24-3, and it wouldn't shock me.
Wow, and if we played that drinking game, none of us would be able to stand by the end of this. Pierce, what do we think? Chase or fade?
I will chase the Lions. This is probably
Wow.
pretty dangerous. I don't know if I have any last year stats that are going to help the Lions. Probably don't. They probably make the Lions just look even worse. But this year, when the Lions are 6-point dogs or larger, they're 5-1 against the spread. They cover when they're supposed to get blown out. They don't cover when the games are supposed to be close, which we've all learned that mistake here. Every time we think, oh, the Lions are going to win, it's going to be close, they get killed. But when we think they have no chance, they hang in there. So here's a game where they're a big time underdog. They're not supposed to be close. And I wouldn't be surprised again to see them hang in there. I mean, the only time that they didn't cover as a big dog was against Green Bay. And for 3/4 of that game, they hung in there in week 2 against Green Bay. The line to me seems like it should be a lot closer, which means then it should turn into a blowout. But I'm just going to trust the numbers. A big line. Lions tend to cover these games.
All right, Alan, chase or fade Green Bay as 1-point favorites on the road in Minnesota is a trap, and Green Bay wins easily.
Yeah, I think I understand the question as being a fade because I don't think Green Bay should be favored in Minnesota. I just don't respect Green Bay right now. I thought the offense looked completely dysfunctional last week. Rodgers did say in the postgame that he felt exhausted and understandably coming off the COVID list, but there's only one pass catching option Minnesota needs to really worry about, and obviously that's Davante Adams. And usually it's not difficult to cancel out one player. Everyone loves backup running back A.J. Dillon for good reason this week, especially on DraftKings, but Aaron Jones was their second leading receiver, and Dillon can step into that traditional running back swing pass role, but they used to put Aaron Jones and line him up outside. They cannot do that with Dillon. This isn't a mortgage, bet your mortgage payment game, but I like Minnesota with a reasonably high confidence here.
All right, Pierce, where you leaning on this one?
Much to the chagrin of Admiral Akbar, I think I'm going to fall for this one, and I'm going to chase. It does seem very fishy, but Green Bay's a good team. It just doesn't make any sense. We've only seen a small glimpse of what this offense can do. We don't know if they'll completely unleash the offense this week, but they can at any time. And we know that, hey, Aaron Rodgers is going to get to practice this week, so they're going to have a little bit more improvement on the offensive side. And the defense is for real. This is a legit good defense. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what they have done to improve it. And the one thing that it seems to be the takeaway is they're just limiting big plays. They've given up the least amount, the fewest 40-yard rushes. They've given up the 4th fewest plus 20-yard passes. They're not allowing big plays to beat them. They are requiring teams to work the ball downfield against them, and they're just not giving up a lot of points. Secondary has been really impressive as well. The linebacker core has been awesome. I got to chase this, even if it is a trap.
Jeff, is it a trap, chase or fade?
No, I don't necessarily think it is a trap. I mean, I'm just glad that we got Pierce on tape admitting that an NFL team is good as well. I mean, here's the down and dirty of it. Kirk Cousins entering this season, his record against winning teams was 7-35. We've got a point spread here of under 3 against Green Bay, who's going to be a winning team this year. Do you really want to trust Kirk Cousins in this spot? I mean, I don't think that the Packers necessarily lose that much with Aaron Jones because they've got a very capable replacement in A.J. Dillon. I think that their offense anyways is just predicated on the short passes with Davante Adams as well. So there's lots of ways Green Bay is going to be able to move it. I think the Vikings are an okay team, but they're not good at stopping the run. They've shown propensities to get in shootouts all season long, and their offense can be hit or miss. Green Bay's the better team here. And like I said, I mean, you've got the Kirk Cousins factor. So no, I chase Green Bay being a very solid bet this week.
All right, finally, guys, chase or fade, the best over bet of the week is Steelers-Chargers on Sunday night at 47. What do you think, Pierce?
That's going to be a fade for me. If Mason Rudolph is the quarterback, I don't see how you could go with this one. I mean, he threw the ball 50 times last week against Detroit. So what do you get? 500, 600 yards, 240 yards on 50 passes versus Detroit, a 71 quarterback rating. He had a 0% pressure rate last week. They blitzed him 12 times. He was never under pressure. He should have hit plenty of big plays. He did not because his bad pass percentage is 18.4%. It's been pretty astronomical throughout his career. And on the other side, you've got the Chargers, which are pretty much playing under. They went over 3 times, but 2 of those overs that the Chargers have accomplished this season were by the skin of their teeth. So give me the under.
All right, Jeff, what do we think? You want to take the under too?
I guess. I mean, I'm a little bit tempted to say this is a good over one, but I just think there's too much uncertainty with Mason Rudolph and the whole quarterback situation. The Chargers have really tanked of late on defense. Like 27 or more points allowed in each of their last 4 games now. This is a team that can't stop the run, and I do think Najee Harris is going to be able to get on here. You know what? I'm just going to switch in game here. The more I talk about this spot, the more I like it, and I do think it makes for strong. It's not the strongest over on the board, but do you really want to start fading, making an under with the Chargers team who can't stop anything right now, and even the Steelers last week who allowed Detroit and DeAndre Swift to get off? I think this one does have a little bit of a sneaky potential to potentially just produce more offense. So I'm going to lean over with this one. I was kind of on the fence before, but I wouldn't say it's the strongest over on the board, but I would lean over in this spot.
All right, Alan, what do we think? Jeff just changed his mind mid-segment.
Yeah, I'm fading here. It doesn't look like there's many Mason Rudolph fans. I would love to see Aaron Rodgers go to Steelers next year, especially if Ben Roethlisberger is done or doing the backup circuit. They're going to be playing without Chase Claypool likely again, and his Mason Rudolph's number 2 pass catcher last week was Ray McCloud, the prestigious Ray McCloud. The Chargers forgot that throwing deep to Mike Williams actually works. So unless there's a fluky fumble 6 or a pick 6, I prefer the under. I always get suspicious when Vegas is begging you to take the over.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it as always. Now let's get more on the big Cowboys-Chiefs matchup with our Cowboys insider, Nick Eatman, to see if we'll see more offensive fireworks in Kansas City this weekend.
So we have a tendency, right, to try and turn negatives into positives. I think especially over the course of a football season, sort of human nature. At least we try to do that anyway. But was this that, to lose the way the Cowboys did against the Broncos, was that a beneficial wake-up call, for lack of a better way of putting it? Because this team came out against the Falcons as aggressive, as angry, you might say, as they have all season.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you never want to say, let's get a loss here. You don't ever think that you need that. But I think you can learn to build from it and go, all right, what can we take from it? And really, I thought it was a wake-up call when you go back about a month before that and think how they beat the Panthers, the Giants, the Patriots, the Vikings. All of those games, they did not start out well. Some of them losing at halftime, trailing in the second half, and had to kind of get it going. And I think Denver was a wake-up call to say, you don't always get it going. You can't just have these slow starts and expect to come back. They not only didn't come back, it got worse in Denver. So I thought it was a good wake-up call to say, we need to get on track, get a fast start, jump on them early. And you saw just a motivated, hungry team. And like you said, angry. They were very embarrassed by what happened against Denver.
Cowboys had a team record 29 points in the second quarter. And I'll readily admit, Nick, this is kind of a dumb question because you know this team well. You know how explosive this offense is. We talk about it week after week. But to see 29 points in a single quarter, is it possible this offense is even more explosive than you give it credit for?
Yeah, I mean, for that to happen, you got to have some. It's got to go your way. And I mean, I believe they started the first possession of the second quarter with the drive already down there, able to score quick. And then you get a punt block that you recover into the end zone. So there are some things that sort of have to happen, but let's not forget the offense. It can be very dynamic. It was, and they were balanced. They were throwing the ball around, but then they also got in that red zone and ran the ball in. They figured something out a little bit with a fullback, if you will, and Connor McGovern, who's a backup guard, but they're running the ball better. They red zone was great. So, it can be a dynamic offense when they're all clicking like it was Sunday.
3 touchdowns for Dak Prescott, 1 on the ground, of course. He passed for a couple to CeeDee Lamb. Ezekiel Elliott ran for a couple. He had a quieter day yardage-wise, but again, got into the end zone twice. But those are names that we talk about all the time. What'd you think of the return of Michael Gallup? It was his first action since week 1.
Yeah, I liked what I saw there. He looked kind of back on track, already doing the things that we know from him. He's got great feet on the sideline. He had a toe tap there for a big 4th down catch. He's also a good contested catcher. He catches the ball in the crowd. He showed that on his very first catch. Now, he's also a deep ball threat. We didn't see that much in the game, but he did drop one over the middle that he could have gone for a little while there too. So maybe a tad of rust there, but he made some other great plays earlier that you think he's back on track and ready to go, and just another dynamic player that they throw into the offense.
So with Gallup back, 3 for almost 50 for him. And again, that first game since week 1. And this is a guy who a couple of years ago, he had 1,100 plus yards. Last year in a full season went for right around 850. Does anybody have to suffer with Gallup back in the offense? You know, who takes a little bit of a step back here?
Probably, Cedric Wilson, who had just filled in nicely as the third receiver, and he's done a good job. And he was banged up with a shoulder injury, didn't really play in the game, maybe played a snap or two, but so that was kind of good timing from the Cowboys standpoint to just throw Gallup back in with Cedric Wilson out. I mean, that'll probably be what happens. Cedric Wilson doesn't get as many catches, but it's Gallup. This is a big year for him, contract year. And he has a chance, and he's a dynamic deep ball guy. So just another great addition there. And I think that those are been your best 3 receivers all along. And what we haven't seen really is we haven't seen the 3 of them with Dak Prescott for more than just a handful of games. And that was last year before Dak got hurt. And then, then it was all different with the offensive, with the passing game. So to get all 3 of these guys with a healthy Dak, an offensive line, and a running game, it could be even better than we've seen.
Dallas and KC next. So give us a fantasy focus here. What's the priority on offense?
Well, I mean, keep up, score and attack the secondary. And I think, as long as the weather should be good, it should be cool, but it won't be too bad. I think they can throw the ball around there. And I think you have to attack Kansas City secondary. You got to spread them around. This is a great game for Gallup to be back and going again, because you're going to have to attack them. I think you got to play the entire field, 50, 55 yards or whatever it is wide, use it all, and really get the Chiefs secondary going in all ways. And, when that's happening, I mean, he's been quiet lately, tight end Dalton Schultz, but look for that to come back into play for this game. You just can't cover all these receivers, and when you try, that's where Schultz is typically over the middle, clapping his hands, ready to go 6 yard, 12 yard, 15 yards, and he can make some plays there. So I would think Schultz could be a guy that could rack up a few points this week.
Welcome back to The Sweat, and welcome to our NHL panel. RotoWire's Paul Bruno and AJ Schultz, who are here for NHL opening face-off. So we got an 11-game slate tonight in the NHL. We're going to choose the top options available to us. So usually we look for the big top price center on the slate, but let's look for some value at the center position. Who's your favorite center with a lower price point tonight, Paul?
I'll give you 2 of them, Jesse. First of all, Chandler Stevenson at home against Detroit for $4,800. This guy's long been an underrated center on the top line there, and he's on fire this year with 16 points in 16 games played. Mark Stone is back on his right wing, so that'll give him an added boost. And I'll also note the Wings are 6th from the bottom in the league in goals against per game, with a .333 goals against average for the team. Not very good, and I think Chandler Stevenson takes advantage of that. Then I'll give you another one, Logan Couture, $5,300 for this point-a-game guy who's in St. Louis tonight. The San Jose Sharks are on the last game of 5-game road trip. They're 2-2. They want to end it on a winning note. Get Blues against the winning note against the Blues. That's pretty good, I think. But in any case, this Sanders, he's got 14 points in 14 games played. Plays all the high leverage minutes on the power play too. I think it's a cheap value for number 1 center.
All right, AJ, who you going with?
Well, Paul stole my thunder here and went with Logan Couture. So I guess I'll pivot real quick here and mention Rupe Hintz. He comes in a little bit lower on the price tag. He's got 3 goals and 1 assist in his last 3 games. Another assist if you want to go an extra game out. So a 4-game point streak for him. And so, yeah, Rupe Hintz of Dallas. Plenty of shots on goal over that stretch, too, which is certainly important to hit that floor as well.
All right, Carolina is on the road in Anaheim. 2 good options at wing with Troy Terry at $5,500, Andrei Svechnikov at $7,100. So who are you picking there, or are you fading both those guys and going somewhere else at wing, AJ?
Look, at this point, you just can't fade Troy Terry, like not at $5,500. That price tag is so ridiculously low for a guy that scored in 15 straight games dating back to the season opener. Like, until he stops scoring or the price tag jumps up, I mean, really, I would still consider paying for him at $6,500. So, yeah, there's no way you can get away from using him tonight. That price tag is just too reasonable, given what he's doing on the ice right now.
All right, Paul, do you agree Troy's price is just too good to pass up?
You can't have me agree with AJ throughout the show. I'm going to disagree here. Sure, Terry's on fire, but he's facing the top team in the league tonight, and Freddie Anderson with minuscule goals against average. I wonder if he's playing in the World Cup qualifying with those numbers as low as they are. Andrei Svechnikov, 18 points in 14 games played. A little too expensive at $7,100. There's cheaper options out there. I'm surprised AJ didn't mention Jake Gensel, Penn's top shooter against Montreal, $6,500. 9 points and 31 shots in his last 10 games played. Finally getting to play with a healthy Sidney Crosby, and Montreal's going to be using an AHL goalie tonight. Andre Palat for Tampa is another great option, a cheap one on the top line for Tampa. He's one of my go-to guys on nights like this against Philadelphia for $5,000, 8 points in his last 10 games. He plays on the top power play there too.
All right, what do we think? Which defenseman needs to be in your lineup, Paul? A guy that you just need to get?
Well, a couple of guys. Tony DeAngelo seemed to have cleaned up his act around this new club and is sticking to just playing the game. He's doing that very, very well too, Jesse. 14 points in 14 games played, fit in seamlessly on the top team in the league. He's also a power play quarterback on that top unit. And then Shane Gostisbehere, we talked about him last week. He's rediscovered his offensive game on the desert, 9 points in his last 10 games, almost 2 shots on goal per game. He's running their top power play, and he costs only $4,600 tonight.
AJ, what do we think?
I'm going to stick with Dallas here. I think Miro Heiskanen is a fantastic play tonight. Again, another guy that's been red hot lately, 6 points in his last 5 games. He's playing huge minutes over that stretch, over 24 minutes a night, and is getting plenty of power play looks. Now, technically, if you go over to rotowire.com, check out our depth charts, you'll see him listed on the number 2 power play. But if you break it down, Dallas has split guys up. You know, they've got Radulov and Hintz on what you would call the number 1 unit. They've got Ben and Sagan on the number 2 unit. So really, it's a 1A, 1B. And so I wouldn't let that kind of scare you off that you see him as this like number 2 power play quarterback.
All right, now it's early, but what do you think the top goalie matchup in DFS is tonight, AJ?
Well, I'm not going to overthink this one. You know, there's a reason that the Panthers are the heaviest favorite tonight on the DK Sportsbook at -185. I'm going to pay all the way up to use Spencer Knight, who's confirmed in goal. That just came out. He'll start tonight over Sergei Bobrovsky. And so just don't overthink it here. They're the favorites for a reason. It's a good matchup for them, and just use Spencer Knight tonight.
All right, Paul, what do you think?
I'm surprised AJ's not talking about the Penguins yet. High win probability for the Pens against Montreal. Take whoever starts for them in goal. It'll cost you $8,100 for either Jarry or DeSmith. I've never seen Andrei Vasilevsky priced so low on the DK list, only $7,700. He's on the road tonight too, but a compelling choice the way he's been playing of late for $7,700 tonight. And finally, Connor Hellebuck over the Jets. He's got to be in the heads of the Oilers by now. It's 6 straight wins and counting for him. If he gets another one tonight, I say yes. I think he's in their heads, as I said. The top guns will misfire for Edmonton, and Hellebuck will cost only $7,300 this evening.
All right, AJ, real quick before we let you go, what's your best bet on the DK Sportsbook for tonight?
Well, I'm going to put one that's a little out there. I've got a 4-game puck line parlay for you that I really like tonight. You take Edmonton, Calgary, Florida, and Tampa Bay, all of them to cover the puck line. Each of them very easily could. And you're looking at plus 4109 on the DK Sportsbook. Again, a 4-game parlay that's really not that outrageous when you think about each of those teams winning by just a goal and a half.
All right, Paul, what do you think?
I normally shy away from road favorites, but tonight I'm on the Penguins in Montreal. I mentioned the goalie matchup there is compelling for -145 for the visitors, and then I double down with Tampa in Philadelphia, -130.
All right, good stuff, guys. That'll do it for hockey. We're going to bring our football panel to talk about TNF when we come back, but right now, quick break. All right, our NFL panel is back. DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich, and RotoWire's Alan Seslowski. Guys, it is NFL Thursday night showdown time. Need your top plays for DFS and DK Sportsbook for Patriots Falcons. So let's start with who's your captain pick is going to be, Pierce.
I'm going to captain the New England Patriots defense. This might sound strange, but the Atlanta Falcons are probably the worst 4-5 team ever. They are, I don't think they're overrated, but you look at their schedule, all of their wins have come against inferior opponents. Anytime this team has faced someone good, like, I don't know, last week, Matt Ryan had a quarterback rating of 21. He threw 2 picks against Carolina, which aren't really world beaters. He threw another 2 picks. Earlier in the season, he threw 3 picks against Tampa Bay. He's an old man, let's be honest. And he doesn't have any receivers to pass to. And he's facing a New England defense that gets better every single week. Jeff talks about New England all the time, how good they have been. And it's true. Like, we're not stretching it at all to say that they've been good. And you look at their pass rush, it's amazing. They've got a top 10 adjusted sack rate, top 10 in pressure rate, top 10 in quarterback hurries. You've got great potential for takeaways and a possible defensive touchdown in this spot.
All right, Jeff, your captain in this one is...
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jakobi Meyers. I mean, it's more of just like a strategy standpoint from anything. Meyers coming in, easily the most consistent Patriots receiver we've had all year. And he's got 4 games with 9 or more targets on the season. And the thing is, everyone's expecting, and Pierce is right. I mean, like, this is a bad Atlanta team. We could see the Patriots run up the score here again easily, but everyone will be expecting them to do that with the 2 running backs. Jakobi Meyers, even in games where the Patriots have been ahead, he gets those targets. And, you know, again, this is a player who he broke the seal. I mean, he grabbed that touchdown. The Atlanta Falcons allowed 13 touchdowns to the wide receiver position already this year. I mean, this does feel like a spot where, I mean, he could easily end up in the end zone a couple times. So now that he's gotten that first one, the confidence is there. But the real reason I like him, again, it's that crowd mentality. Everyone going to be looking to captain the Patriots running backs, or maybe even the defense, like Pierce said. I don't think many people will be captaining Jakobi Meyers. He's got just as good a shot to go off in this game, though, as the rest of the Patriots offensive players.
Jakobi Meyers, the most expensive wide receiver on the board. Alan, who are you going to go with for your captain?
Yeah, strangely enough, I landed on the Patriots defense also. Belichick famously erases his opponent's best player, and that's bad news for Kyle Pitts, so I'm not taking him, obviously. And with Cordell Patterson iffy, I could tell myself a story where the Falcons are in a must-pass DEFCON 1 situation, and we know that leads to fumble 6 and pick 6s. Patriots D could be the path to $1 million tonight. I'm right there with you.
All right, let's move on to some value plays. Jeff, where are you looking for that in this showdown?
I mean, this one is definitely not, you know, there's not screaming values, and it's kind of going to create a really interesting situation, I think, for showdown strategy, because I don't think the field's necessarily going to land on one person over the other. But why not just look to the Atlanta receiving core? I mean, we do have a spot here where they should be throwing 35 times a game. Now, how productive that'll be depends. But I mean, Tajay Sharp at 3,600, like, I just think that you have to give this guy a shot at this price. I mean, he's essentially playing almost every snap with Calvin Ridley out. You look at his player card and you see, you know, 1 target in each of his last 2 games. And I mean, it's horrible, but like, again, Matt Ryan has to throw the ball to someone. There's going to be opportunity out there. I think Tajay Sharp is probably just a low sentiment play. And again, but he's going to be out there for the Atlanta Falcons. And so are a couple other receivers, but I think Sharp is where I'd lean. His price is just too ridiculously cheap here to not take a look.
All right, Alan, where are you leaning for value?
Kendrick Bourne, 7,600. You know, we talked about value as a relative term tonight, but he looks good to me. At least 15 DraftKings PPR points in the last 3 of the 5 games, touchdowns in 2 of those games. I like to follow the money, and Bourne was given a 3-year, $15 million contract this offseason. The Patriots like him.
All right, Pierce, what do you think here?
Nelson Aguilar, might as well mention another New England wide receiver, but it makes sense. Atlanta has struggled against receiver 1, receiver 2, slot receivers. They struggle against everything. And just the way I see this playing out with the defense having a big game, I don't necessarily want to chase a bunch of volume with running backs. You don't get much savings with them anyway, or yardage. I'm just playing the game of hoping to guess for the touchdown. And it comes down to Myers versus Aguilar. Basically, the red zone targets are equal. Myers has 1 more, but only has 1 touchdown on the season. And he costs you more. Just take the savings, take Aguilar, and hope that I guessed right with the touchdown.
All right, let's move on over to the DK Sportsbook, shall we, Alan? What's your favorite player prop available?
I'm making this the Kendrick Bourne day on on the live stream. Bourne is over 2.5 receptions. I'll pay up the minus 175 juice for reasons I just stated. The Patriots are proactively getting him involved. And the other one that popped out to me is Bill Belichick, as I said before, is going to bracket Kyle Pitts, the under 4.5 receptions at plus 110. Belichick is going to make sure Pitts doesn't beat him. I'd love to see an alternative live on this. I would take under 2.5 and hammer that one.
All right, Pierce, favorite player prop, please.
Matt Ryan under 251.5 yards. I'm kind of on the same page here as everybody else, and that Belichick shuts down key receivers. He's going to shut down Kyle Pitts, so that leaves Cordero Patterson and his gimmicks. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to get over 250 yards leaning on Cordero Patterson's gimmick plays, and then also Gage and Olamide Zaccheaus. I don't think they're going to get that. Not against the fifth best defense in football that's played pretty well. Oh, by the way, you look at what Matt Ryan's done in his last 3 games. He threw for 120 yards against Dallas, 150 against Carolina. I don't see him going over 250 against New England tonight.
All right, Jeff, what is your favorite player prop available on the DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. It's Matt Ryan to throw an interception, to go over 0.5 interceptions, minus 160, but I mean, this is a player with 5 interceptions over his last 4 games. And Pierce is right. I mean, this could be like the end of Matt Ryan we're witnessing here. And like tonight, I mean, if it goes terribly like it did last week, this might be it, man. I mean, the Falcons might pull the plug here late in the season if they get out of it. You've got a New England team, very, very aggressive on defense, 14 interceptions. They're 3rd in the league already. They're big favorites here, so we're going to get, like, most likely some situations late in the game with Ryan just chucking it up. Just trying to make something happen. I'm almost surprised that we're not getting like a 1.5 total on Ryan's interception, but at 0.5, yeah, I want the over on that 100%.
All right, let's go slate approved now. This is your favorite bet on the board for tonight's game. You can go anywhere with this, Pierce.
New England -7. I know it's a spot where you don't like to lay 7 points, but as I mentioned earlier, Atlanta at 4-5, maybe one of the worst 4-5 teams ever. They're that bad. This is not a good team. They've had a very, very comfortable schedule. And on the other side, you've got a New England team that might be one of the best 6-4 teams ever. Jeff has talked about this almost every time we get a chance. This is possibly a 9-1 team, and not just a 9-1 team, a 9-1 against the spread team. There's only one game where, they deserve to lose. That was against the Saints. But everything else, they've been right there. They've been playing well. The defense gets better every single week. I know it's kind of a big number, but this Atlanta offense doesn't have anything, and New England's got everything rolling.
All right, Jeff, where are you going for your slate-approved pick?
Yeah, I'm all about piling into New England here, too. I think there's multiple ways you can do it. You could just bet the spread, and I definitely like the spread call, but I think you can get more aggressive here. New England over 3.5 team touchdowns, plus 120. We know Bill Belichick isn't going to take his foot off the gas here. You've got a healthier New England team with both running backs likely available now. You could go over New England's team total points, 27.5 here at minus 110. You can even go into, I think you can go into like the game lines and get New England, at something like minus 9.5 or something like that at really nice odds here. So actually coming in at plus 115 at minus 9.5. So I think there's multiple ways you can bet New England. I like that over 3.5 team touchdowns because I think this one gets out of hand as well. And I think New England ends up in the end zone more than 3 times here.
All right, Alan, take us home. Slate approved pick, your favorite bet on the board.
I mean, New England's been outpacing the spread for a better part of 2 decades, but I like the under 47. No one likes betting unders. I mean, rooting for punts is literally the worst way to watch football, but especially with a low number like 47. But I keep telling myself a story where the Patriots, who love to play 1977 style football, score around 20 points, and the Falcons can't get in the end zone for the 2nd straight week in a row. I actually took the under earlier before I came onto the stream.
All right, thank you, fellas. Appreciate the time. As always, we are closing in on the final block of the show. We're breaking down tonight's 6-game NBA slate next. block of the show, everybody, and we are closing it down with our NBA panel. DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Nick Fryer, and RotoWire's Nick Whalen. So we got Nick F and Nick W on the show. So I will be referring to you as such. All right, it is NBA building blocks time. So which players are you building your DFS lineups around? We got a 6-game slate tonight. Let's start at guard. Are you going to pay up and build around Steph, or setting your lineup around somebody else since he's questionable for tonight? What do you think, Garion?
Yeah, this is definitely one of those situations I'm glad my parents got creative. Named me Garion. Makes things a whole lot easier. But yeah, we got to wait on Steph. I think he's probably going to play. He was a full go in warmups this morning. I would be surprised if he doesn't play through the questionable tag. And he's always viable. I don't have anything bad to say about Steph Curry. However, I do like someone else a little bit more on a dollar-per-dollar basis, and that's DeJounte Murray, who right now is kind of doing everything out of necessity for the San Antonio Spurs. He just missed a triple-double in his last game. It would have been his second consecutive triple-double. And while I'm not going to sit here and say triple-doubles are sustainable, when you look at his advanced numbers, it's making a lot of sense that he's putting up these kind of statistics across the board. I mean, he leads the team in usage rate. He leads the team in minutes per game. He leads the team in potential assists per game at 14.9. Heck, among active players, so not including Jakob Poeltl, who is again out tonight for conditioning reasons coming off that health and safety protocol, DeJounte Murray leads the team in rebounding chances per game at 13.9. So he just does everything. And I know it's a little weird to almost pay $10,000 for DeJounte Murray, but I'm willing to do it tonight in what should be a pretty good matchup. Both these teams top 10 in pace. So I think we're going to have to expect an up-tempo game here.
All right, Nick F., what's your take on this one?
I'm waiting for us to get like the wild adventures of Nick and Nick, like that old Nickelodeon show, Pete and Pete. So we got to get the producers on that at some point.
Yeah.
But I'm actually in lockstep with Gary in here. Look, you can't say anything bad about Steph. But when you see him with that questionable tag beforehand, I know he just got upgraded to probable, but still I would think a little bit concerning going into tonight. And DeJounte Murray's just been too good. And at 9.8K, I think you're getting dollar for dollar what you need. And with DeJounte, too, he's going up against the Timberwolves tonight, and they're on the second leg of a back-to-back, one of the 3 teams that are on a back-to-back tonight. Of course, the other two teams are facing each other tonight. But with the Timberwolves, too, we talked about pace a little bit, and they're not doing particularly well against point guards this season. They're not one of the worst, but they're certainly not one of the best. And this guy's, he's cooking right now. I mean, he's been immensely consistent throughout the entirety of the season, and he's doing it in different ways. Like Gary was highlighting, the triple doubles, a potential one last game too. So this is the team too that he's going up against that's not immensely defensively efficient. They're not the worst either, but they're not as efficient as the 2 Los Angeles teams that he just faced. And of course, he racked up 60 DK fantasy points against them both in his last 2 games. So I think that this is a no-brainer to go with Murray tonight.
All right, Nick W., who are you building around at guard?
I think we're going to make it a clean sweep for DeJounte Murray. And, you know, like Nick and Gary and both said, I mean, it's hard to argue against Steph Curry. I'm not going to tell you not to put that guy in your lineup, but when you're saving $2,000 to go down to DeJounte Murray, who has 2 straight 60-plus DraftKings points games, he's got 22 rebounds, 19 assists, and 6 steals over his last 2 games alone. Going with Murray over Curry gives you more flexibility elsewhere. And I like this matchup against Minnesota. The Timberwolves, after what was a really encouraging start through about a week and a half, have started to look a hell of a lot more like the Minnesota Timberwolves of the last 2 decades. And the thing that makes me like this the most is Minnesota goes into tonight with the worst defensive rebounding percentage in the league. And normally that's not something that you're super concerned about when you're talking about a guard, but a lot of Murray's value comes from his rebounding. I mean, he's the best out of position guard rebounder in the NBA, and he's going up against a team that, frankly, just doesn't rebound very well. So the nice thing about Murray, he doesn't have that same kind of scoring upside as a Steph Curry, really nowhere close. But even if he's only getting you, say, 17 points, he's probably going to get you 9 or 10 rebounds. He's going to get you 8 or 9 assists. He's going to get you 2 or 3 steals. So there's a pretty high floor here for a guy who's not a primary scorer.
All right, a clean sweep. I like it. Nick F., which forward are you going to be building around? You could pay all the way up for Paul George at a whopping $11,000.
Yeah, sure. You could do that, or you could try and save a little bit of money and go with a guy who did well for us early in the week in Bojan Bogdanovic, who's at 5.7K. Tonight he was at 5.5. Last time out, he's going up against the Raptors this time. And he's coming off consecutive 39.5 DK fantasy point performances. I'm going to pay for that every time when I'm getting at this price range. Last game was his fifth 20-point game of the season, and he's feeling it from downtown too. He made one less three-pointer last game, but he also took about half as many. So a little bit more efficient. And then, he's very point dependent, of course, when it comes to his fantasy production, but he's been doing a little bit on the glass of late. I think he's gotten 6 in back-to-back games as well. And we're at a time too, where as much as the Jazz are fine offensively from an efficiency standpoint, their top guys are not as shooting at their best rate. So I want to go with the hot hand, and I think this is the best way to go about it with Bogdanovic. And then when you look at Philly, who he just had that 39.5 DK fantasy point performance against last time, they're pretty similar to the Raptors in terms of defensive efficiency and pace. So I think a repeat performance at minimum is well within range for Bogdanovic tonight.
And he is going to be in the 5s. So Nick W., which forward are you going to be going with?
I certainly don't mind Paul George. I don't love the options at forward. So if you do go a little cheaper at guard, paying up for Paul George in a really good matchup, especially against Memphis, not the worst idea. He's coming in off of back-to-back 50-plus DraftKings points games. But, if Jimmy Butler plays in this game, the Heat are on a back-to-back. He had missed the previous 3 with that ankle injury. He looked fantastic against New Orleans last night. So, again, make sure you double-check his status with the good folks at rotowire.com before throwing him in a lineup. But, I think he has pretty similar upside to Paul George, and you're talking, $1,500 cheaper. So a lot more flexibility there. So Jimmy Butler's probably my top play. I think I'm going to stay away from both Siakam and OG Anunoby, assuming both those guys play. Utah's defense just a little bit too daunting for me in that matchup. Tobias Harris, 8,800 at Denver, somewhat interesting. The Nuggets have actually been pretty decent on defense. He probably matches up with Aaron Gordon, who, physically at least is a kind of an ideal guy to throw at Tobias Harris. So I don't love the matchup. He is coming off of a down game against Utah on Tuesday, but he did have 51 DraftKings points against the Pacers in their previous game last weekend. So I don't hate Tobias Harris at 8,800, but I think Butler at 9,500 is where I'm leaning right now.
All right, Gary, and which way are you leaning in terms of forwards?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting value that could be opened up tonight with the Clippers. And obviously, if you have the money to use Paul George, it's a fantastic matchup. Memphis has the 2nd worst defensive rating in the entire NBA. But with Terrence Mann still questionable, he's missed a couple games in a row now. And then you've got Nick Batum, who's doubtful to play in this game with an Achilles injury. They just don't have a lot of forward depth. They're already missing Kawhi Leonard and Marcus Morris. So someone like Luke Kennard could end up playing 35, 36, 37 minutes tonight if all of these guys stay out. Now, I would have no problem pivoting to Terrence Mann if he ends up being active for this game. He's just $4,700. Kennard's $4,400. But either one of those guys, there's just so many minutes to be had for the Clippers right now at the wing positions, and I could just see them playing incredible amounts of minutes at a sub 5K price. So ideally for Kennard, you would have both Mann and Batum sitting, but whoever really is active of that group, I think they are in a very good value spot tonight.
All right, Nick W., is Jokic against Philly your building block at center? He is the most expensive center on the board at $12,000.
Yeah, obviously it depends what you're doing at the guard and the forward spots. If you're paying up for Steph Curry or you're paying up for Paul George, this becomes a little bit more difficult to justify. But at the same time, Jokic has only dipped below 50 DraftKings points once in his last 8 games. So he's been ridiculously dependable and picked up essentially where he left off at the end of last season. And on top of that, he should be eating Andre Drummond alive tonight against Philly. No Joel Embiid. Of course, for the Sixers, that becomes a really, really appealing matchup. So I understand it if you do want to pay up. I do like Rudy Gobert versus Toronto. You're getting a pretty steep discount relative to Jokic. He comes in at 8,000. Still no real center for the Raptors. They've been leaning towards Siakam at that position. Precious Achiuwa has been banged up. He's a little undersized. Kem Birch has been kind of toiling in a reduced role off the bench. Same with Chris Boucher. So they don't really have an obvious guy to throw at Gobert. I think that's a really good spot for him. Montrezl Harrell as well at 6,200 going up against Miami. He's cooled off a little bit over the last couple of weeks. His minutes have started to decline just a bit. But if Bam Adebayo ends up missing a third straight game in this one, and again, Miami's on a back-to-back, so that is a possibility. If that happens, I really like Montrezl Harrell at 6,200.
All right, Gary, and who do you like at center?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Pascal Siakam. I agree with Nick. It's not an ideal matchup. Definitely, the Jazz are a scary team. However, I just think the volume sort of supersedes the efficiency worries tonight. Pascal Siakam has played 2 games since his minutes restriction was lifted, and in those 2 games, he's averaged 37 minutes, 22.5 points, 9 rebounds, and 6.5 assists. If OG Anunoby is not going to play in this game, I mean, Nick Nurse already runs some of the tightest rotations in the NBA. I mean, OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet lead the NBA in minutes. They are 1-2, and it is not even particularly close. So now that Siakam can play every minute of every game, Nick Nurse just might make him do that, especially if Anunoby is unavailable. So keep an eye on Anunoby's status. But I think even if he's in there, Siakam is sort of just, I wouldn't say obviously retaken his number 1 slot as the number 1 option in this Toronto offense, but he's heavily involved and probably going to play more than 36 minutes tonight. So even in a tough matchup at sub 8K, I think he's a pretty nice play.
All right, Nick F., what do you think?
I think Nick W hit on it a little bit with Jokic, where you have to get some exposure with him tonight because he's going up against Andre Drummond. And we saw what happened earlier in the week when Rudy Gobert went up against him. I believe it was 17 rebounds and 15 points. Solid night for Gobert. Obviously, Jokic is going to put up a lot more in terms of fantasy perspective. And Andre Drummond, I mean, he's not bringing it. But we guys also touched on a little bit with Bam Adebayo as well. I think that if he plays tonight, you need to get it on him. I do think that Trez is definitely worth going with if Bam is not playing. But the Wizards are on the second leg of a back-to-back, and I know that the Heat are as well. But Washington is the second worst team versus centers in terms of DK fantasy points this season. And with Bam, he didn't play last night. So as much as injury is a concern, he's one of the guys that will be rested in this one tonight. So I think you can take advantage with him. So I think mixing it up in terms of exposure with those two is the way to go. But yes, I think Jokic is going to end up being the absolute number 1 guy tonight, just because Drummond, what's he going to do against him?
All right, Gary, and we need a value play that you can build around. Where are you going for this one?
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys below 4K that you can take a look at. Aaron Holiday is probably going to be pretty popular. Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't seem like he's going to play back-to-backs, at least in the first half of the season. Hasn't been officially ruled out for tonight, but we all expect him to be, and I think it'll be Holiday who ends up starting. He was pretty successful in a DFS capacity the last time he started for the Wizards, so I think at $3,800, he could be someone who a lot of people gravitate towards. And then to keep talking about this Raptors rotation, it's kind of interesting to see what happens if Anunoby doesn't play. Nurse has come out and said he wanted to be flexible with his starting lineup because, as Nick mentioned, they don't really use a center right now in their starting lineup. They kind of just use 3 power forwards in the wing slots. I wouldn't be shocked if Nurse sort of moves Barnes and Siakam to the 3 and the 4 if Anunoby's unavailable, and starts Kem Birch, especially if Precious Achiuwa is not available for this game. So if Birch ends up starting pretty much based solely on the matchup with Rudy Gobert, he is at the bare minimum tonight, $3,000. He could be looking at easily 25 to 30 minutes. So I would just keep an eye on who the Raptors end up starting if Anunoby's unavailable.
All right, Nick F., need some value.
I'm going to go back to the Denver-Philly game because Philly is not a defensively efficient team, and I know Aaron Gordon hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot from a fantasy perspective this season, but he had a nice game a couple games ago up against the Hawks, and they are one of the worst teams in terms of points per game allowed versus power forwards. We're talking strict points, not fantasy points. He scored 23 in that one, and then when you look at Philly too, over on DraftKings, they are the 3rd worst team against power forwards in terms of DK fantasy points this season. So I want to, put a little, get a little exposure to him because this is a matchup on paper that should be favorable for him tonight. Again, Drummond's not going to do much stopping things in the paint, so I'm going to go with Gordon as my top value.
All right, Nick W., take us home. Value play you can build around tonight.
All right, I'll throw out a few names here. I like Eric Bledsoe at 5,800. Not an extreme value, but I do think he's become a little bit undervalued relative to the workload that he's playing for the Clippers. Thaddeus Young, 5,500. Not a ton of upside, but kind of like DeJounte Murray in some ways, just an all-category contributor who continues to be really solid in the absence of Jakob Poeltl. I think Jordan Clarkson at 5,200 is a nice deal tonight. Desmond Bane at 4,400. He's still holding on to that starting spot despite Dylan Brooks coming back. It's actually been DeAnthony Melton whose playing time has suffered the most. And then the best D Wade to ever play for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dean Wade, $4,200. If Jared Allen doesn't play tonight, he's missed the last 2 games due to a non-COVID illness. If he doesn't play tonight, I think we see another big minute night for Dean Wade. He's played 35 and 38 minutes over the last 2 games. Obviously not a super productive player, not a guy that I think has, a ton of like long-term potential, but the Cavs are running out of options with Evan Mobley out. Marketing status very much up in the air. Kevin Love still kind of limited. They don't have a ton of options, and Dean Wade is going to be thrown out there for a lot of minutes if Jared Allen does not play.
All right, good stuff, guys. Nick F., Nick W., Garion, thank you for your time, as always. Starting today at noon, we have the Titans at the Rams for our Madden schedule. The slate is at 5 p.m. with Kaufman and Reed. We got more on the Thursday Night Football matchup, and the Sweat will be back tomorrow morning.